Hades 2 surprised everyone when it released into early access out of nowhere. The sequel to the former Game of the Year, Hades 2 thrust players into a new saga of gods and titans, chaos, and order. The game feels familiar, yet new systems challenge what's possible as players hunt down the titan, Chronos. My name is Codiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and here's everything I wish I knew sooner about Hades 2. To level set, I love Hades, and a few years back when we covered the original game, over 1.5 million of you checked out our tips and tricks video, so first off, thank you, and welcome back, because we're here to do it all again. Let's start with an easy tip regarding enemies. By now you've probably cleared your fair share of rooms, but there's something I want to make sure you understand, and that's yellow enemy health bars. At any point in time you'll run into various enemies with yellow health bars. These are tougher than their average counterpart for one particular reason: they can't be staggered. This is something you need to be mindful of anytime you engage with one of these enemies because, unlike normal foes, enemies with yellow health bars can't be staggered by normal attacks, which means you're much more prone to taking damage. Once you break that yellow health bar, these enemies function like normal, but until then be very careful and understand that your abilities will not stop them from attacking. Much like Zagreus from the first game, Malenoe has a variety of combat tools at her disposal, but they're not as straightforward this time around. One of the abilities that took the longest to wrap my head around was her bind, B on controller, which summons a big circle underneath her feet. By simply deploying the bind, you trap enemies in place, and enemies that move into the circle become trapped as well. This is a vital tool for controlling movement, and it was only after about a dozen runs that I realized its full potential. If you hold down the bind, you can empower it, causing it to explode after a short duration. With a couple of boons from the gods, this becomes an absolute nuke, and you can easily deal hundreds of damage at the cost of just a little of your magic resource. To make things even better, you can use the bind attack preemptively, which is my favorite way to deploy the attack. Every time new enemies spawn, try and identify the biggest pockets of them, and then place an empowered bind to entrap as many as possible. Not only will they spawn and be stuck in place, but they'll explode almost instantly, and that usually means less enemies you have to deal with. Don't sleep on that bind ability, as I found it to be one of the most potent in all of Malenoe's kit. If there's one thing I want you to get comfortable with early, it's using the terrain to your advantage. I wouldn't say Hades 2 is easier or harder than Hades, but it's different, and that means we'll need to be smart about how we approach progression. One of the easiest ways to make short work of enemies is by using the terrain, and this is different in each zone, so you have to learn the nuance as you explore each part of the underworld. In Erebus, the first zone, trees shatter and the pieces will fly off in the direction that you attack them. You want to put the tree between you and the enemy, and then attack the tree towards the enemy. This will inflict serious damage and will often outright kill a foe. In Oceanus, you'll see these large brass devices. Attack them, and after a short delay they'll explode, damaging any enemies caught in the AoE. There are also a number of steam vents on the sides of the room that you can trigger, and while these don't cover as large an AoE, you can still use them to great effect. The third zone, the Morning Fields, features a number of terrain hazards, such as red miasma that slowly creeps towards you and roots you if you come into contact with it. There are also statues that explode, dealing AoE damage to all enemies in an AoE. Even still, there are strange trees that shoot out projectiles at enemies as you attack them. The bottom line is, no matter what zone you're in, what world you're exploring, you need to look out for terrain hazards, both good and bad, and use them to your advantage. If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that second chances are good. In Hades 2, you can unlock a guaranteed Death's Defiance, letting you come back from a fatal attack. To do this, you need to invest enough Ash into your Arcana upgrade. If you don't have enough Grasp to support the Death's Defiance card, simply upgrade your Arcana until you do have enough to support the addition of the Death's Defiance card. I also want to point out that the cost of your Arcana cards is actually in the upper right-hand corner of each card, not the Roman numeral on the card itself. For whatever reason, that confused me for a dozen or so runs. While you're out in the world, focus on gathering whatever resource you need, either Ash or Arcana, and then lock in that all-important upgrade, which will give you a second chance if ever you receive fatal damage. You're not going to kill Chronos on your first run. Heck, you might not even kill him on your 100th run, and that's okay, because death is part of the roguelite formula, and Supergiant does death better than anyone else. Don't be afraid to die, or even intentionally kill yourself if a run isn't going your way, because chances are something at the crossroads is going to be different that next time around. That means you'll have one more sliver of progression that you can tap into. It might be something small, like a new incantation to unlock flourishing grounds so you can plant and harvest reagents. Or it could be something huge, like Moros delivering the Faded Scrolls, but whatever the case may be, the only way to trigger those progression moments is through death. Obviously, if you're rolling through the game with little issue, these tips aren't for you anyways, but if you're a more casual fan of Hades 2, then become comfortable with death. Hades 2 introduces players to a new gathering system, something that might feel a bit out of place in a fast-paced roguelite. It's actually not as cumbersome as you might think, and the real key is making sure you have the right tools for the job. This all comes back to your various upgrade systems, especially incantations and nocturnal arms. Progression is always gated behind various upgrades, and the only way you'll get the required reagents is by having the right tool during your runs. A simple example is this: if you want to unlock the Moonstone Axe, you need silver, and the best way to get silver is by making sure you have the pickaxe equipped. If you have any other tool, you won't be able to harvest those silver nodes during a run, so always keep progression in the back of your mind, and remember this system runs in parallel to the actual combat, so it's something you should be keeping a mental note of whenever possible. There's often a trap with roguelite games, that you need to move faster than you actually do. Hades 2 is no different, and this is more of a sweeping statement for anyone that's newer to the genre. You don't need to constantly bob and weave your way through destruction of enemies every second of every run. In fact, sometimes your best course of action is to actually slow things down, let enemies spread out, and then systematically kill them one or two at a time. If you ever feel the pressure of enemies closing in around you, or you just have a nasty room you have to deal with, simply move to the outside walls, regroup, and then reset the pace, whatever you're comfortable with. Realize too that every nocturnal arm has a unique playstyle, and the pacing for each is wildly different from one to the other, so you'll also need to account for that. Returning from the first game, Nectar is a special item that you can gift to NPCs throughout Hades 2. Back when I was young and naive, playing Hades for the first time, I would hold on to these, hoping that it would provide some incredible rewards, and while that's somewhat true, there's no real reason to hold on to a stockpile of Nectar. As I said, this item should be given as a gift to NPCs of the world, and in turn they'll reward you with keepsakes, just like they did in Hades. One of these can be selected and equipped before a run, and they provide you with various buffs. The more Nectar you gift, the more keepsakes you collect, and that means more options for those runs. The sooner you get and start using keepsakes, the sooner you can level them up, which is an important part of the system. Usually they require you to complete dozens of rooms to rank up, but with each rank comes more power, so don't wait to tap into this system as it could aid in your overall progression. During your runs, you'll walk through dozens if not hundreds of doors, but it's this new symbol here, one that we didn't see in the original Hades game, that I want to talk about, because it's possibly the best choice you can make at any given moment. These helping hand doors will bring you to a new room that always features an NPC specific to that part of the world. In Erebus, you'll find Arachne, who will provide you with your choice of one of 3 armor sets. There are different options that offer varying buffs, and depending on what you choose, the armor can augment your gameplay for that entire run. In Oceanus, you'll find Narcissus, who is a bit less directly helpful, but will still provide a helping hand, offering you a number of reagents that you can take back to your base for progression. The bottom line is these doors are freebies and shouldn't be skipped, as they can provide you with valuable rewards for minimal effort. Remember that you can also gift Nectar to these various NPCs, granting you new keepsakes, and if you're aiming to collect and level them all, well, that's just another reason not to skip them. One thing I was excited about going into Hades 2 was the introduction of new and varied boons. These buffs were powerful in Hades, and I was curious how the team was going to level up the system in the sequel. One way they did that was with the introduction of completely new gods and goddesses, and one stands out more than any other: Selene, the Moon Incarnate. Her buffs aren't so much passive bonuses, but entirely new skills. If ever you have the option to get a moon boon, especially early on, you should take the chance, because some of her skills can be a game changer when fighting troublesome rooms or even bosses. Her boons grant a hex, and the options are wildly different, ranging from powerful beam-like attacks to multi-target curses that turn enemies into harmless creatures. Each hex needs to be empowered, done by spending your magic resource, but once fully charged, they can be unleashed. Having a hex on top of your other abilities is huge, so don't pass up on the opportunity to commune with the moon goddess whenever possible. So there you have it, everything I wish I knew sooner about Hades 2. Keep in mind that the game is currently in early access, and things may change over the course of its development, but at its core, Hades 2 will remain more or less the same game. If you have any questions, of course, drop us a line in the comments and we'll do our best to help you out. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.